I saw a system that was very corrupt, and that was not okay with me. So I built a model, a practice model, that focused on actually empowering people to actually get results.
Over 900 practitioners. What are some stories that really stick out in your mind of success?
He had nothing. He didn't have an office, he had no money, and he didn't know what to do. But what he did have was grit and humility and coachability. But they took the coaching and they took every piece of advice and just implemented it. Even when it was rough, they continued to implement. And before you knew it, they've taken home profits, almost 7 figures, working very limited work hours, spending half of their time in Europe.
What are some of those common pitfalls that both of you see that would be helpful for individuals to know ahead of time?
I'll give you my take on that.
Hey, and welcome to the FPC podcast. Guys, today we are actually diving into the history of freedom practice coaching and all the key lessons learned along the way. I am with the founder of Freedom Practice Coaching and the CEO of Freedom Practice Coaching. We've got Dr. Charles Webb and John Linton with us today. Guys, this is going to be really, really exciting. This is the first installment of our Building Our Ecosystem series. And so we're going to be actually like pulling back the curtain on the entire journey of freedom practice coaching because we were a startup, very much so at one point. And you get to hear all the stories, the rights and the wrongs, the learnings along the way. And so I'm just so excited for this episode. So John, Charlie, thanks for being with me today.
Awesome. Thanks. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, guys, how are we doing?
I'm doing great because in San Antonio, the weather's always blue sky and it's really nice out. And I had a good sleep last night and a cup of coffee, so I'm ready to rock.
Awesome.
Day, ready to roll.
Amazing. Great. So, Charlie, I'm going to start with you because as the founder of Freedom Practice Coaching, you've got some stories. So why don't you bring us all the way back to pre-FPC and tell me about the origin story of where this even came up in your mind and how'd you get this thing started?
Yeah, so I'm going to keep it as brief as I can. I just did a podcast with Dr. Trevor Botch earlier today, and we talked about the reason that you find often. I heard this on a Ed Milet podcast. Actually, he was talking about entrepreneurs, highly successful entrepreneurs, more often than not, find their way and actually go after this big change they make in the marketplace because of some painful situation, rather than just this glorious destination, right? And I think that's where mine was. I never, in my life, would have dreamed that this is where I'd be at this point in time. But there was a point in time where I was very disenchanted with being a doctor and being in practice. And what I was seeing and what I was experiencing was a system that I didn't care much for. It wasn't what I had expected when I went to school to come out and help people. And there was finally came a time, I was very successful, had multiple practices. And there was a time that I felt like, okay, I have an opportunity to tuck these into a public company and kind of cash out, so to speak, because my heart was not there. And got involved in other things, and some big lessons that I learned is being an entrepreneur isn't just like, I think I'll open up a business. And so I had experienced some of the faults of that as well, and the challenges of getting involved into other industries. I had my success, had my downfalls, but eventually I came to a point where I knew that my heart was actually in supporting, empowering people into their health. That was who I was. And I got back into it. And when I got back into it, Seth, I knew that I wasn't going to be content with just having my practice. The painful part was a combination of things. The reason I wanted to go big. And one of those was the painful part. Like I said, I got out, I was hurt that this is not the way practice is supposed to be. So I built a practice model that focused on actually empowering people to co-labor into their health, to actually get results, to actually get to their destination of super dad, super mom. And, but the other part of it, that I saw a system that was very corrupt. I saw the enticement of people to come into a system to be able to basically profit off of ongoing managed suffering. And that was not okay with me. And so when I built this model pilot, so to speak, called the Imagine Wellness Center, that I knew would be the starting point, the launch pad of helping other practitioners get out of the system and get the public out of the system without going into depth on, yes, the good, the bad, or generally speaking, I think we've all come to a point of realizing that the traditional model isn't set up for health. Our country has demonstrated that. So that's how it became to be. And so I planned on early on, eventually coaching people, and then the time just set itself after the model was working on its own, and I didn't need to be involved until it was time. And that was way back in 2012.
It's amazing. So coming out of that, you had Imagine Wellness is the pilot center, right? And you realize somewhere in there, maybe I can make a bigger impact with teaching other people how to do this. So, to me, this sounds like the spark, right? This is the initial vision of what then turned into FPC. Give me a little bit of the translation going from Imagine Wellness to all of a sudden you're now working with other and other practitioners who have their own business or want to have their own business.
Yeah. Well, to begin with, of course, you're getting into little unknowns. I had developed myself into somewhat of an entrepreneur in the practice, very successful. I knew a lot of the lessons learned, the challenges. I knew system structure. So I had built a model, a complete model. It was ready to duplicate, so to speak. And so getting into that, actually, it grew faster than I anticipated. A lot of people had found out about my practice and the success and so forth. So it grew pretty quickly. And, just like when we teach people, sometimes you got to start getting your sailboat on the water even before it's completely built. And I knew I couldn't wait for everything to be perfect. So started moving forward with it. And of course the challenges came along the way. But the bottom line, we were successful. We were helping people duplicate my model. And lo and behold, it was working, and it was working really, really well. But as we get in this conversation, we'll find out some of those challenges that required me to find people and surround myself with people that knew more than I did in reference to entrepreneurship and actually, scaling a business.
Yeah. So John, we'll get to you in a minute, but you come a little bit later in the story. So I'm not leaving you out, but I'm trying to get through the timeline here.
That's okay. I don't feel left out.
Right. Great. So Charlie, when there's an outside perspective about FPC at this point, right? Because we're a growth / scaling stage company, and people forget that it was a startup one day, right? And startups are messy. When you're trying to find product market fit, when you're trying to acquire customers, like things can get messy, right? And that's the nature of the beast when you're trying to bring a vision to reality. So tell me a little bit about the challenges that you faced early on, after fully resigning yourself to this is what you're going to be doing professionally for the future.
Yeah. It's a fine line of ensuring that your product, your service is doing what it's supposed to do, right? You're making clients really happy, really successful. But at the same time, you have a job to scale that. And so there's going to be some hiccups on the way. Some of my early hiccups it's something that I would, present to anyone. Really think about who you're going to partner up with. And early on, it made sense that I did partner up with an individual, and I'm not going to go into a lot of depth in it, but there were certain skill sets that I hadn't mastered. I was pretty good CEO in my practice. Was I set to be the kind of CEO that was required to build the company the size of what FPC is today? No, that's not my wheelhouse. I'm a visionary. I'm a doer. I've got a lot of courage to go out. I know how to speak and empower people, and that's my wheelhouse, right? So getting involved with people, we see this a lot with doctors, thinking that it makes more sense to partner up with someone to begin with without really understanding, is that person need you? Do you need them? And if you do, you need to really double question it, because you've got to kind of go, well, I really need a partner of someone that doesn't need me but has the skill set, right? And so some mistakes were made early on, and I can tell you they could have been critical. They could have been critical because the individual was more in tune with just scale. I was in tune with get good results. We have a reputation. And I know we'll get into it, but I met John Linton around that time, and it was the perfect fit. And this company actually wouldn't be where it is without that skill set, that level of understanding knowledge as a CEO and an entrepreneur. So that was probably the biggest challenge. And I think that goes hand in hand. A lot of doctors that have gone out on their own and they've partnered with people find out that not everyone's going to bring what needs to be brought to the table. So there's a place for it for sure. But giving up equity and things like that is a very risky situation. And if you don't have a board to speak to on that, you may fall into a situation and need a divorce.
Yeah, a board or a mentor or even a coach, right? Somebody to run things by. Charlie, I'm going to come back to this, right? Because I'm going to poke a little bit deeper into this in a second. But since you mentioned John, I want to bring him into the picture. So John, from what I hear, you were just you were on the street with your resume in hand, desperately looking for a job when you met Charlie. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, that's close to accurate, but not quite the story. So my background is in technology, and I'd run several technology-based companies before, and I was fortunate enough to exit a company in 2007, and semi-retired, and was doing personal investments and transactions, and Charlie had helped me with some health issues, just a few years before that. But in technology, it's really not very rewarding. We can scale a company. We scaled a company from zero to almost $100 million in revenue in just a couple of years. But its mission didn't touch me, if that makes sense, right? So when I got to see what Charlie was doing, and working with these practitioners and helping them thrive in this model that is really, it's tough to get well in a sick model. And I experienced that personally. So when Charlie shared his passion with me and shared what he was doing, it was something that pulled on me. And man, Charlie, what was it? I think it was 6 months or a year. I was hounding Charlie. How can I get involved? How can I?
Johnson was literally coming by the office. And at the time, Seth, the office wasn't a lot bigger than the room we're in right now. I mean, we had one room in the office, and then it was just a little L-shaped office, and John would come in and really be saying, I want to be involved. I want to be part of this. And my initial thought was, I don't have a place for you right now. And honest truth, he came in one day and he threw a checkbook down on the table. And I said, what's this? And he goes, just write a check. Put the number in. Oh, what is it? So I knew he was serious. We started having a conversation, and I thank God that John never gave up on that, because I would have missed out. Right. And his point is what John saw, and I've heard it from we got A players, and we got some serious people that have done very well before even coming to FBC and our executive team, et cetera. But I hear it time after time after time. I finally found a place that I have purpose. I finally had a place that I have a noble purpose, that I feel like I'm making a huge impact. And John had the skill set, the intellect, all these things that are, not everyone has, but nowhere to park them to where that he could go home at night and feel like, look what we did.
So John, you put a checkbook down, right? But I don't think you were just looking at an investment. Obviously, you wanted to make some bigger impact. Obviously, you wanted to see the investment that you were making turn good. But from my lens, you're really good at seeing potential, right? Potential in people, potential in businesses. You have an amazing investment mindset, right? And so you can see things in a little bit of a different perspective than others. So what did you see in Freedom Practice Coaching and in Charlie in the early days that made you, other than I can help people, what did you see that really made you want to get involved at the level that you are?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm trying to go back in time and think in my mind, right? But it's really good. Evaluating a business model is pretty simple. Does this business model work on paper, right? And in almost every sector, in almost every market, there is a business model that works. So you've got to check that box. So that was the first thing that I saw. But the second thing that I saw is something I'd been looking for my entire career, which was a purpose and a mission. And not just a purpose and mission that Charlie shared with me for FPC, but his clients all had a personal, purpose-driven mission to change health, to help people, to do something tangible like that. So to me, in this phase of my life, right, what was most attractive was to be able to come in and share in that vision and that mission and help people make a difference and help people change, what Charlie rightfully refers to as our broken system, because I really do believe that if we can just shift healthcare a little bit in this country, we can make a huge impact on our society and all of our practitioners sharing that mission. And that was what compelled me to want to be part of this.
So you walk in the door, right? You've written a check. You're now part of it. And I think that people in business underestimate what will happen next when they either bring on somebody who's extremely experienced and has expertise like into their business, or hire a coaching group or a mentor who's been there and done that, right? A lot of times they think like this is going to be a smooth ride, it'll be status quo and everything will be fine. And that's not usually the reality. So, you walk in that door. What happened next with the business?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a few things. There's a lot of positives, right? The business had a great foundation, a great model. They had people that knew how to deliver the service. There were some things in the financial model and some things in the culture that needed to shift to really increase that excellence and continue to have a supportable business model. So there was a lot of cultural change that was a challenge. But I think overall, we did have our bumpy periods in the beginning, but it was pretty smooth because everybody is on purpose, right? So even staff and all the way through the organization, as early as 2014, or I guess it was late 2013 when I started getting involved in FPC through today. I mean, it's really been quite remarkable to see a company that has grown from almost nothing to where we are today, with a staff that has consistently been on purpose and on mission. So that purpose and that mission that has been propagated throughout the staff has helped overcome any bumps. So looking at compensation packages and changing those to meet the market and making sure there's profitability, to really questioning are we doing the best job that we can? How do we push ourselves to over deliver, to under promise and over deliver? All those things were bumpy in the beginning, but the foundation of having a great culture was there. So the staff embraced those changes.
Charlie, did you intentionally design that culture from the beginning? Or did it organically happen with the team?
I think a combination. I mean, my character is who my character is. I'm typically a very empathetic person. I really, really want to make certain people do well. It's very important. I feel when people aren't. And the styles that I had and the styles that John had, it was a little rough at the beginning because he came from a different world. He came from a world that, okay, guys, we're going to knock this out. There's a bunch of nerds, right? We're going to stay here and we're going to throw our sleeping bags on the ground for the next 2 nights and get this project done. That was a little rough coming into a culture of caring and nurturing, right? So, but at the same time, it's a business. And some of that needed to come in. The person, John, came in and immediately was placed at the helm. He's the CEO. And we've always had a relationship of respect, of knowing that was what he was offered and that's what's been open to him. And I step aside on when it really comes to that position, that's his. We make decisions together very readily because we have respect. But giving him the authority is something that a lot of doctors, the owners, have a hard time doing. And if I didn't give him the authority right from the front, why hire him? Right? I mean, it doesn't make sense. And we thank God, we both could see, well, maybe I'm wrong here. And John, well, maybe I'm wrong here. And sometimes my communication skills and what I've learned by working with John have greatly improved right? You both give. And so in time, the organism, the culture itself forms itself on really a high level of respect for each other in the company, and everyone knowing that they're going to be there to do. I mean, our culture at this point in time, our employees have unlimited paid time off. That doesn't happen all the time. And a lot of companies are afraid that someone's going to take advantage of it. Well, it speaks our culture. No one takes advantage of it. That's the kind of respect that everyone has for each other, and the respect to stay in your swim lane and do the best you can there and support other people in their swim lanes. So I think the culture is still developing, but our culture is so solid that I can honestly say a lot of people will come to us today because of the culture alone. It's just like, who wouldn't want to work in this type of environment? And they simply don't want to leave. They're being empowered.
So Charlie, it sounds like this partnership has been a journey for you, right? It wasn't instinctual. Maybe you had a little bit more leaning towards knowing that you needed a partner, where a lot of people are less sure of that. But I see this as you mentioned, a really challenging area for people, understanding not just bringing in a CEO, but bringing in anybody into their business and then letting go of the reins, or giving that accountability and authority, to use some of John's words, right, to that person. Like, what advice do you have for practitioners, owners, or even office managers, right, of how to have that partnership and how to really empower that relationship so that you get the best out of it?
I think the simple answer would be get rid of your ego. You can't hold on to it. You don't have to be the chief. You don't have to have the title. I mean, I'm the founder of this business. I don't have a title. I don't want one. So, but really, recognizing that if you really want the business to scale, you want the business to do its job, you can't hold on to everything. It just makes sense to find people that know more than you do at a position and onboard them appropriately and give them authority and allow them to earn trust, right? I think there's a certain part we have to kind of say, hey, this person's not done anything for me not to trust them at this point in time. Let me give them some reins. I can always pull back a little bit, but starting off with a tight rein and not allowing someone to be creative and do their job, they're going to look for another place pretty quick, right? And that might start, you might be in a place where you can afford to be a B- player. That's going to take more work. Once you get to an A player, it's expected, and they expect that. They expect you to give them the freedom and trust them of being the expert in that position, and they can run with it, right? Knowing that they're not going to take advantage. And that just comes with professionalism. So be willing to let go of the ego, be willing to not be the chief, be willing to surround yourself with, it's a beautiful thing to not be the smartest guy in the room, smartest girl in the room, right? I can honestly say I am not the sharpest tack in the box. I'm really good at what I do. I'm very good at what I do. I'm very confident at what I do, but I'm not, nor do I really care to be the CEO at the skill set level that John's in. Why? Because this is my last rodeo and he's here. I'm not going to start another rodeo, and I'm not going to need it. Even if I did, Seth, I know what my skill sets are at this point in time in my life. I would find, if that came to that, I would find another well-developed, groomed, cultural fit CEO.
So we're in 2014. We're going to fast forward to 2025. So a quick decade to the overnight success that is Freedom Practice Coaching, right? And what I want to change the topic to is the clients, right? The clients who we worked with. Over 900 at this point, practitioners over this last decade plus, right? Dozen of years. From both of you, what are some stories that really stick out in your mind of success from those practitioners that came on board?
So before we go on to success stories, can I tie these two together just for a second? Because when Charlie was talking about partnership, and I just see it in a lot of our clients, right? And I can think of successful partnerships, and I can think of challenging partnerships. So, Charlie and I had the benefit of knowing each other for, almost a decade before we partnered up with FPC. And I've seen, practitioners that want to come into business with a partner because often they perceive it to be easier to be in business with somebody else. And in certain cases, that's really true. Like I can think of two women who joined us. They worked in a practice together for years beforehand. They knew each other really well. They complemented each other's strengths and each other's weaknesses. They were tired of being employees. They had their own vision, and they signed up with FPC. And I think their first month they did, $140,000 or $130,000 in revenue because they complemented each other so much. They supported each other. They knew it wasn't going to be easy, so they were able to pick each other up when they were down. And it was a beautiful, and still to this day, they are rock stars, and that practice is thriving. Conversely, I've seen other situations where a doctor will be like, oh, I need a partner, and they'll partner with the first person that comes along that they don't know, and they perceive that person, right? Because that's what the person leads them to believe as a business expert or wherever they're weak. And what they find out is that they set these things up as a 50-50 partnership, and that 3 months later, it's a train wreck, and there's no way to undo it because a business partnership is a marriage, right? And if you're going to dissolve that business partnership or move away from it, it's like going through a divorce. So when you think of picking a business partner, think of getting married, right? Because that is exactly what you're doing in a business context. So I would suggest if you're going to look at a partnership, get some coaching as how to structure a partnership before you enter into that partnerships, because there are ways to walk, crawl, then run, just like dating someone, then getting engaged and getting married. So that would be my advice to anybody listening, unless you know somebody extremely well and you know exactly who they are. Be very careful about how you structure that partnership, because it can get rocky. But if it's the right partner, it can be amazing.
I call that outsourcing your confidence, right? Or early on, we outsource our confidence to somebody else, and it's usually not the best fit.
I always use the example of there's two bums on the street and they're both giving each other entrepreneurial advice so they can team up together and create a business. Because I don't have the answers, you don't have the answers, but surely together we will, right? But to your original question, instead of starting off with any specific case, I'll tell you, through time, I don't have a crystal ball. I couldn't determine ahead of time, is this individual going to be the one that's going to go to the top, right? That's really going to knock it out, be coachable, et cetera. But in time, what I found is I'm pretty good at identifying those who are going to be successful. It's like once you've created a successful model, and it's been duplicated a multitude of times, minimum of 100, let alone almost 1,000. No longer do we have to doubt whether the model will be successful or not. It has to just match your resonance, right? Hey, I resonate with that. I'm on purpose for that. I can believe in that. Well, then surely, of course, it will work, right? There isn't. Well, will it work for me? That's like, we'll diet and exercise and quit eating bad stuff and get good sleep. Well, I don't know if that'll work for me. You're a human being; it'll work, right? What kind of grit do you have? What's the timeline before you throw in the towel, or are you not going to throw in the towel? And that's the same thing with business. And what I found is those that either they come to us this way or they get to this way, where they finally put their hands up, they surrender, and they say, I don't know what I thought I knew. And I'm coachable, I'm humble, I'm respectful, and I can sit back and accept this. It's those who come with, I'm going to listen to you, but I think I know better. That's not going to be a fun ride for either of us. And there's some stories I can think of where I didn't even accept the individual initially, and gave them some thoughts, gave them some homework, and they eventually made some changes that I recognized, okay, you're ready to go. And they were so ready to go, and it was the relationship that was created. There is a point in time where the mentor has earned authority. The mentor has earned that place out of respect, not higher than thou, simply, I'm a mentor now, right? You're sensei, have respect. And when they show that and they like, I got it, tell me what to do. Once I get it done, I might have more questions rather than tell me this. Well, did you get that done? Right? It's the implementation. It's the grit. It's the humbleness. It's to recognize that if I just do what they say and I work hard at it and I don't look at challenges like problems, but look at them as opportunities, those people will get to the top. They will get to the pinnacle. They will live an extraordinary life. So these days, what I'm finding is the people that show up, because I still do strategy calls with prospects, and we take them through a process, as you know, to get them ready for the call. They know how to show up. They should know. When they show up, I can tell right away almost, do I want them as a client, and are they going to be successful by how they show up in their attitude, their humbleness, their respect, their willingness to listen, their willingness to change, and to make it obvious, I'll do whatever it takes. That's who ends up becoming a very, very incredible, successful individual and making an impact in the world.
Yeah, that's very profound. But I do have one specific example just because it's fresh on my mind. And I know we work with a lot of successful practices and help them become more successful, right? But the story that always stands out in your mind is kind of the rags to riches story. So I'm gonna talk about that one story for a second, just because I happened to spend the last week on vacation with him and his wife. And I remember my first call with him as a coaching call, and he had nothing. He didn't have an office. He had no money, very little money. And he didn't know what to do. But what he did have was grit and humility and coachability. And he literally was knocking on doors to partner with another practitioner just so he could get an office space to start his practice. But he was heads down. He and his wife, because his wife participated with him, they had very little business acumen, but had a passion for what they were doing. So they took the coaching and they took every piece of advice and just implemented it. Even when it was rough, they continued to implement. And before you knew it, he outgrew that in a very short period of time, that little single office, leased his own space, and they've continued to grow and thrive. I think the last few years they've taken home profits, almost 7 figures each year. They now are going to continue running their practice, working very limited work hours, spending half of their time in Europe. And I had the privilege of spending, the last week on a boat with them in the British Virgin Islands with 2 other clients that have, also similar stories that had humility and grit and perseverance. Because if anybody tells you starting a business is easy, it's not. But if you have the grit to just do what it takes, you have, Charlie said, you can put that ego aside. And if you're willing just to do what you need to do and pick yourself up, right? As long as the business model is a business model that pencils out, you will succeed. So I've got dozens of those stories I could tell, but that one.
Let me keep sharing this story a little bit, because he's with this incredible story, right?
Yeah.
Well, the other part of that story is the owner of the boat. Well, that's a client. And the owner of that boat, 60-foot catamaran with 4 staterooms, came to us nearly 10 years ago and said, Charlie, this is what I want. I want to work a 3-day work week. I want to get remarried. And I want to get my captain's license to sell. I want my wife to get her captain's license. I want to get a 60-foot catamaran and keep it in the Virgins. So that individual that shared their boat with John, the other client, this is his client. And I remember it was a few years back when I knew he went to go get his captain's license. He had already gotten remarried at this point in time. So that, check that off. He was already working 3 days a week. Check that off. And so he went to get his captain's license, and he sent me a picture. We have really great relationships with our clients. They're friends. And that's why he was on the boat. But so he sends me a picture, and I look at the picture, and it's a little round table in a cabin of some sort. And I quickly recognized it was a boat. But on that table, there was 2 champagne glasses, and there was a captain's hat. I was like, oh my God. But I started putting the picture away, and I noticed there was something sitting under the captain's hat. It was a little postcard. As I kind of zoomed in, I could see that it was a picture of a catamaran. So I gave him a call and I said, congratulations. And he said, well, thank you. And I said, so you both got it. I said, so tell me, what else did you get? He said, I got my 60-foot catamaran. So it's great stories like that. And I can tell you, this individual, the entire time he's been a client, he's never come and whined. He's never freaked out. He's number one, he's just a calm, chilled individual. Not everyone's got that, but he has always come. His conversation has always been open. He's always let us know what's going on. He's kept his stats until we know what's going on. We can coach him. And he just loves to serve. He loves to help people. So that now he's working 3 days a week, but he's only doing that 3 weeks out of the month. The last week he's selling people down. I have not been on the boat yet, so I guess it's my turn next.
This is not my area of expertise, but I don't believe we call a 60-foot catamaran a boat. I think is that more yacht territory?
I think they're called that, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. They've done quite well. So these are great stories, guys. And I actually want to flip it a little bit and do a 180. It's really easy to identify when practitioners come to us, right? Come to FPC in the prospecting phase. It's easy to identify if they have the grit or not, right? And what is going on with their situation. We can help strategize, identify where their biggest challenges are, where to move, kind of this 3D chess that we call business. But once they are clients, there are still challenges, right? It is not a direct straight path from 0 to 60-foot catamaran in 3 to 5 years. You still have to keep up the grit, and there's other pitfalls throughout that. So what are some of those common pitfalls that both of you see with people once they are actually doing the work? That would be helpful for individuals to know ahead of time.
I'll give you my take on that. So I think it still comes back to grit and perseverance. Like at the end of the day, it comes back to grit, perseverance. At first it's like learning to play baseball. You don't step up to the mound the first time and expect to hit a home run on your first pitch. You're gonna strike out a few times, and then you get down the hitting and everything's going well. And from time to time you get the shanks, or the golfers, right? From time to time they get the shanks and something goes off. But the successful ones always turn back to either a framework that's developed and realize where they've gotten off course, or a mentor or a coach to help them. How do I stay on track, or what do I do? So as long as you remain humble, as long as you remain open, being comfortable to be uncomfortable and correct, direction instead of thinking that you already know the answer, right? So remain open to understanding what the challenge is, and you have the grit to get through those speed bumps, right? That's a successful business owner, whether it's a practitioner or somebody building Microsoft. That's what it takes to get through and build a successful business. So to me, I could think of every other challenge and say, okay, we had, a personnel challenge, or we had a marketing challenge, or, I had a service challenge. All of those things will happen in the evolution of a business. You're always going to have challenges because you're going to have an employee challenge here, or something's going to change, or the market's going to take a little shift here, or what have you. But if you have those characteristics and you remain, focused, and you have the grit, and you remain humble, and you remain open to learning and course correcting, you're going to succeed. So that to me is the formula.
But John, that's hard to do.
What happens, Seth, is like, I met with my broker yesterday, and, people, when they're in the market and the market's bullish and everything's going good, and it's like, and I made this much today. And I always have to say, well, you didn't make it unless you pulled it out, right? And likewise, you didn't lose it unless you take it out. But then the market drops. Oh, this sucks. That's the market. It's been doing that for a long time, right? And so when we get into practice and you have all of a sudden now you're with coaches and you've got a system that works, and you find some pretty incredible success right off the bat sometimes, right? It's like, oh my God, we're there. I see the horizon. I see the 60-foot. and we're there. And then you hit a bump in the market, right? You just have to recognize and get used to the market. You plan on bailing out of the market? No, don't worry about it. You know it's going to come back. Okay. So it's like in business. Okay, so you had a down month. Are you planning on getting out? Well, no. Okay, what happened? Let's figure it out. Let's fix the challenge. And pretty soon, even though it's a down month, you have to look at where you started. And you're up here, so a down month is here. But it feels bad. The grass looks greener now over there. It's not. You just have to realize, hey, I'm here now. The grass isn't green, and if I think it is, and I decide to go back and do this, well, I'm going to come right back down here at the bottom again, and I'm going to go through the same things, and the market's going to drop, and etc. So it's that constant emotional roller coaster that, as an entrepreneur, you have to adapt and recognize going forward. There's going to be a little bit of that, but the pitch becomes very small. It's controllable. You don't have this wide, slope up and down and so forth. And if people, once they get through that and they don't freak out, oh my God, the stock market, my mom actually called me because, oh my God, I lost $35,000. I said, no, you didn't. And she goes, well, yeah, I did. I said, did you pull it out? She goes, well, no. And I said, well, you didn't lose it. It's going to come back. Hang in there. And I had to send her some notes, right? And it's just like, someone that's been in the market forever, like my broker, he never freaks out about it. He knows. So just recognize, stay in the fundamentals, stay what's working. Always know that something fell off. Your 3-pointer's not quite there. Doesn't mean it's not going to come back. Obviously, you're pitching your elbow out. You're doing something that someone needs to maybe look at it from the outside and say, hey, you're doing. Oh, there it is. I'm back in tune.
Yeah. Almost always, successful entrepreneurs are tenacious and stay focused. Right? So I can think of all the successful entrepreneurs I know, and there are quite a few of them. They've all been on mission. They've stayed focused. They've had good times. They've stayed bad times, but they haven't chased shiny objects in bad times. And on the other hand, I know a lot of people that profess to be entrepreneurs that struggle in life because they have a great idea. They get it off the ground. They hit a speed bump and they see another shiny object and they just chase it. Right. And I've watched them for decades. It's just up, down, up, down, up, down. They'll find a new idea or a new gimmick or a new this, and it'll work for 6 months, and then they'll be right down chasing the next thing. And unfortunately, they never get out of that state of panic or fight or flight because they're always chasing the next shiny object.
So they're day traders.
They don't see it that way, but they're day traders. That's a really good analog. Yeah.
Charlie, you said the grass is greener, and that actually, one of my favorite quotes of all time is, the grass is always greener where you water it. Guys, I want to shift into some rapid fire questions. Either one of you can answer these. I have 3, and we have a buzzer, and then we'll kind of wrap up here. The first is, you can go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice on day one of starting FPC. What would it be?
I would have to say I would have used a little bit more discernment on understanding if there's something I don't know, what was the best option I would have had rather than partnering, right? Which of course I can look back now. Coach, and trust me, I was coached all the way through Imagine Wellness. I've always been coached, even in the past, and I will. But I think it would have been wise to really just sit down with someone that had a coaching group and so forth, and had some time and spent with them and said, I need to understand what I'm looking into here. What are my challenges? And I know this is a whole nother animal.
All right, complete this sentence. If FPC did not exist today, the biggest gap in the industry would be?
Well, I don't have such a big head to think that we've made the kind of impact I know that we will. However, I think we're one of the top pioneers in there that are changing healthcare in this country. We've opened up eyes. We've given permission for doctors to take the mask off and say, you're right, I'm not making the kind of impact that I can. And I think all that's been revealed for sure recently anyway. But we had the courage to go out and let doctors, practitioners know, you don't have to play this game. You don't have to play their model. You don't have to depend on them. You don't have to take insurance. You don't have to go by the red tape and stand in line. You can do your own. I consider myself somewhat of a rebel, and I think that's been good for me. And I kind of push people to be a little bit of a rebel themselves and say, hey, if it's not working, you're part of the problem. Let's get out. Let's make something happen. And I think we've done that.
And I think, from my perspective, I think I can't give this attribution 100% to FPC, but I think we've been part of what's allowed the private practitioner to remain in practice. And as a private practitioner, that's the cornerstone of changing our healthcare system. So without us or others like us or opportunities, for someone to get coaching to run a practice, I think the hospital-owned, the system-owned practices would be significantly greater.
It's an amazing lead into the last question. So what's the difference between a successful private practice and a true freedom practice?
I think the word pretty much describes it, right? And you can define freedom in your own ways. I always thought first and foremost about, I've only got so many days on this planet, and once one's gone, I never get it back. I had some hard lessons. I lost a lot of time with my daughter because I was in the system, so to speak, and I can never get that back. Thank God we have a great relationship right now. It's a big part of my life, but having a business that actually works for you and your family, your team, to give them the kind of life that we want to live, and it's not just in four walls or even virtual today. It's not just about work. It's about getting on the tennis court. It's about picking up my guitar. It's about mentoring some young people that aren't necessarily doctors. It's about taking care of myself so my family doesn't have to worry about me. It's about showing my son the world. It's living life. It's thriving. It's instead of simply tied to, hey, I'm my own boss and I make pretty good money, but I don't see my family.
And if I could add one thing to that, which is also feeling good about what you do. I see a lot of successful practitioners, and we work with a lot of them. They're successful, but they don't feel good about what they do because they're working in a system that doesn't allow them to practice they want. So they could be financially successful, but be completely off mission and hate what they do. And that's not part of success.
Great point, John.
It's an incredible place to end and wrap up. Charlie, John, what a pleasure. This has been an awesome conversation. So thank you both. Charlie, thank you for starting FPC in the first place and giving both John and I an opportunity to have the impact and the purpose that we have achieved so far. And I know there's so much more to go for the three of us, our entire team, all of our clients, and really the end users, the patients who are really the ones getting the benefit of the work that we get to do every single day with their disease reversal and their improved health outcomes. So thank you both. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. This has been an incredible conversation with the founder and CEO of Freedom Practice Coaching. We want you to share your experiences and your comments. So you can add those in wherever you're listening, whether this is on Apple or Spotify podcasts, whether you are on YouTube. You can add some thoughts in the comments. You can send us a message at marketing@freedompracticecoaching.com. Like us on the socials and keep listening and subscribe to this for more episodes like this, more episodes with some of our clients, really looking into the work that they are doing in saving lives and reversing chronic disease, and even more business tips to help your practice become a freedom practice. So thank you.